5th of March 2025. This skidmark of mine is something between a loose cannon and a rip the band-aid off, but it's something that you need to think about. I'm going to talk about the situation in which white people are finding themselves today. If you look on social media, it is absolutely astonishing the levels of racism and hatred that is spewed on the public platforms. And what is most noteworthy is that hatred is spewed from people that falls in the generation that I call the Sassa generation. And those posters, they are extremely vocal. And they make the most outrageous statements because their limited education does not allow any room for reality checks or for facts. They are driven by slogans and by memes poured onto them by politicians. So they're actually nothing else than fucking useless drones, powered and controlled by politicians. And you know as well as I, in South Africa, politicians are it's a dodgy bunch, that. You don't want to be in any vehicle where a fucking politician is behind the controls. It's even fucking dangerous to be on a wheelbarrow that is pushed by a politician. But that is something that don't happen because politicians, they will be sitting in the wheelbarrow and some stooge will be pushing them. But let that be. The hatred on social media directed towards white people is enormous. And I want to say to the white people in South Africa today, you have the full right to be proud to be white. Your advantage is the fact that the history and the record shows how the white race in South Africa turned South Africa from the initial humble beginnings as a halfway stop in the Cape for ships, for passing ships, turned that humble trading post into the economic and military powerhouse that it was by the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. And the evidence is everywhere. No one can deny that. The railroad, and the remnants of the railroad, the roads, bridges, dams, Eskom, Krugerrand, Denel, South African Railway and Harbours, SAA, all things that stands as monuments of the achievements of the white race. And now the militants will jump in and say, yeah, they were used for cheap labor and slave labor and all that cuck. They're talking shit, they don't know what they talk about. There were job opportunities for those that wanted to work. And nobody was forced into slave labor. You took the job, accepted the pay, and that was the end of it. And it was your choice. You had the freedom of choice to work or not to work. But regardless of that, South Africa was built into a powerhouse that the world took note of. And then what happened after 1994? The blacks, assisted and empowered and financed by my famous Triple X, took control of the country. And what did they do? In 30 years, they fucked everything up. But don't let them tell you anything. Cyril can stand and spew his shit on this world stages. That is his opinion. He can say those things. But the fucking problem is, he say these things, but the people listening to him, they look at the facts and they say, this guy is fucking lying. And for 30 years, this ANC got away with their shit because they were running two narratives. One narrative in South Africa, for the country, and that narrative was closely guarded and shielded from the outside world, by the local media and by the XXX machinery. So inside the country, they were fucking everything up. They were extremely racist. They persecuted white people. Yeah, other minorities also suffer, but let me stick to the whites. They've got something like 147 laws that restricts my access as a white man to the economy. They've got laws that discriminate against my language. They've got laws that discriminate against my presence. And they've got this narrative that they were driving under their supporters that even denies my right to exist in South Africa. They sing slogans of killing me, and the governing cabal allows that to happen. But all of that was shielded from the outside world, and they were protected. And then came Trump, and he rips the curtain open and he shines a spotlight into the country. All of a sudden, all this cuck was visible to the rest of the world. And by other things that Trump did, XXX lost its ability to shield this racist, militant, socialist, communist cabal from hiding their actions and activities. Now, on the social media platform, their drones are very busy there. But unfortunately, the drone operators, they were also pulled out of the country, and now those drones are operated, or they run on autopilot, with stupid people, incapable people, trying to manage the drones. So a hell of a lot of their publications on the social media are actually just confirming the things that Trump is accusing them of. So in their stupidity, they're actually ensuring their own demise. But they're too short-sighted and too uneducated to understand what they are doing. So they spew this hatred towards the whites, where the whites has got the advantage that the monuments of our achievements are there. The Escorts, the Nels, the railways, harbours, Escoms. They're there. They can't wish it away. And the blacks cannot ever claim that they did that. They did not do that. They had the country under control for 30 years. Show me one industry that they've established that is employing thousands of people. But I can show you many industries that has been destroyed, and the unemployment numbers confirms it. So that's their position. That's the reality that they cannot deny, because it's there for everybody to see. And then with their racist BEE and affirmative action shit, the 98% forced the minority, the whites, basically into the gym where we are training to be fit to can survive. What these blacks don't understand, they went to the shebeens and pubs and restaurants and watched through the windows as we suffered in the gym. What they didn't realize is that through physical exertion comes physical fitness. That's a reality. So we had to fight for our survival in the gym to be fit enough to face the racial discrimination that was excluding us from the economy and all of that. Now these blacks, they've got a fucking problem. It's 30 years down the line where 92% of the population were favored by BEE and affirmative action, and yet, although they're the majority and the full protection of BEE and affirmative action, they could not establish anything. But the whites survived, and white businesses are still flourishing. And this is where the point comes in that I want you, and it is going to come as a shock to most. When you see those racist and hatred-filled posts on social media, obviously you're going to interpret it immediately as hatred directed at you. Don't see it as hatred. See it as fear. They fear you, and they mask it with hate. Why do I say they fear you? For the simple reason. You are white, have a history that is there. Look, they're trying their utmost best to destroy that history. But the remnants are there, the foundations are there, the carcasses are there. And they, in full control of everything, could not manage to establish or build anything. Now, those tweets and posts are what it is. It is bits and bytes in cyberspace. That racism and hatred post that he makes on Twitter cannot feed him, cannot provide a future for his children. He is sitting, most probably, in a flat, tweeting from a stolen phone and spewing the hatred. The reality is, the cold reality is, as this country is collapsing, and we're now very close to a total collapse, when it collapses, that flat is going to disappear and that phone is going to disappear. And what will he have left? Fuck all. Nothing. Because he established nothing in the real world. He achieved nothing in the real world. The Bella Law, the people that resisted the Bella Law were accused of racism. And the stupid population, the majority, fell for it and saw it and drove the narrative that it is racism. And then the Bella Law was implemented. And what happened? All of a sudden, the black parents found themselves in a position that their children couldn't get into schools, but the schools were swamped by immigrants. And the big propagator and proponent of Bella, Lesofie, what did he do? He sits in his fucking mansion and he laughs at your cock. He doesn't give a shit the fact that your child couldn't get into school. He doesn't care. Another big fucking problem is the fight against our language, Afrikaans. And again, the politicians and their clever XXX advisors presented that fight against the language as a racism cultural thing. But what the masses don't understand is that the real target was the higher education institutions. Because the best higher education institutions was built on Afrikaans. And now they've ripped the Afrikaans out of those institutions. What happens in the institutions? The standard drops. The standard drops. And now the people pass the degrees under that lowered standards, and they think they have achieved something until they land into the open market with that degree and they realize, well, but no, none of the employers are interested in those degrees. Those degrees has got no financial value. And those realities, they don't see. And I'm talking about, if I say they, I'm talking about those drones on social media. So I say again, let them spew their hatred. Let them spew their racism. It is not what it seems to be, racism and hatred. It's actually fear. Now what you must do is avoid engaging them. Because by engaging them on the social platforms, you're acknowledging their existence. You're acknowledging their relevance. Don't engage. Look at it and smile and see it for what it is. Fear, screaming out. But don't engage. Because if you engage, you are acknowledging their existence. You are giving them relevance. Don't do it. Let them be acknowledged by their cronies, their same swarm, or what you want to call it, colonies, whatever. Let those people keep them relevant for themselves, because to us, they're irrelevant. We've been persecuted for 30 years by all these racist laws that excludes us or limits our access to the economy. And if you find access into the economy, you reach a certain level of success, and the vultures are there, claiming their share for the bats. And you all know how it works. So the whites in general have learned to survive under these sanctions. Call it sanctions. They learn to survive. And they survive. Trump has now triggered a teeny bit of what he actually can. And they're already buckling and folding. What's going to happen when he opens a tap? They're going to be flushed away like turds are being flushed down the drain. And they don't have any chance of avoiding that flushing, because point number one, they can't swim. They can only float. They're floaters. So they'll go that way. So do not allow them to poison your mind with negativity. Don't do that. You have got a full right as a white person to be proud to be white, because your history is there for everybody to see. The monuments of your achievements are there for everybody to see. It was the whites that turned South Africa into a powerhouse that could compete on the world stage. Today, we can't even compete on the African stage. And that is serious. But the shit that is on the way to the ANC is real. And the fact that they couldn't get that budget presented must be something that you take serious note of. And if they manage to get the budget through, you must understand that budget will be severely punishing the taxpayers and secondly the consumers. It is us that will take the full brunt of that budget for them to be able to continue their high, luxurious lifestyle. Because that's all the budget's about, financing their lifestyles. And I don't know how long the population is going to take it, because if you look at the history of empires and countries, you will see that in every major empire and major country that collapsed, there was a moment, a trigger moment, that brought that empire or country down. Now, the ANC fired the first shot with the Bella law, and that already is making the population jittery. And then they fired off the NHI. Now, don't bluff yourself that the NHI is aimed at giving you better medical services. That's not what it's about. The main drive behind this NHI bill is to allow this crooked, corrupt cabal to get their hands on the last honeypot in South Africa, and that is the reserve funds of the private medical aids. That's what they're after. It's not to provide you with better hospitals and better clinics and better health service. They are after that, because they've already pillaged the pension fund to a place where there are now economists that doubts the ability of the pension fund to meet its obligations to its contributing members. And now they're going after the private reserves of the medical aids. That's the last big honeypot that's available. That is what the NHI is about. And then with the EWC, they stepped over the line. And that's when Trump ripped the curtain back and put the spotlight on them. I don't know how they're going to get past that, because if I look, especially at how they're struggling now with the budget, I have a very strong suspicion that the international world has closed the finance taps. This ANC is not in a position to borrow themselves out of this cock. their only real option is to cut the fat. And they don't want to cut the fat. And they're going to try to preserve that fat by nailing us with tax increases. Now, if you look at the reality of what's happening in the tax base, it's a very small, something like 1.7% of the taxpayers are paying something like 85 or 90% of the tax. Now, a clever government would recognize that valuable 1.7% and protect it like hell. No. These stupid floor planks, they don't. They actually go after that 1.7% to destroy them. Now you, as an ordinary citizen, must ask yourself, if that 1.7% disappears, where the fuck's the money going to come from to pay your SASSA? Where? So, look at those militants on social media. Look at what they're saying. And remember this. First of all, they're confirming everything that they are being accused of. They're doing it. So the accuser don't even have to prove his case. The accuser made the accusation. And they, the accused, are proving the evidence that the accuser is correct. That's the first thing. And then secondly, that cold reality that is maybe a shocker to most that listen to me. That hatred and racism you see is actually, in reality, raw fear. It's fear because they know the whites has got the history to show that they can build and they can survive. They, the blacks, the majority that was in charge for the last 30 years, has got fuck all they can, the only evidence there of their existence for this 30 years lies in the ruins that you see. Everything is fucked up. Nothing works. And you know it. And crime is rampant and criminal gangs controls the country. Criminal gangs and syndicates are in charge of the country, not the government. Let that sink in and think about it. And the next time you see those racist and hatred tweets, don't engage. Because by engaging, you're giving them acknowledgement and you are giving them relevance, which they don't deserve. So, let this become your war cry. Do not engage. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.